Hi. We're still live from Dale Abbey. It's particularly sunny here today, which is unusual for Britain, so I can't give you the view out the window that I normally like to do. But tomorrow we're going back to London and back to BFBS, that's British Forces Broadcasting Service, to continue taking them into the world of video journalism, or Mojo, for those of you who were at the conference in Ireland last week, and using all iPhones. The training session at the BFBS, the end of this week, will be all iPhone, and of course we'll be streaming live from there. One of the things that makes the iPhone or smartphone video so interesting is that it engenders an opportunity to do a completely different kind of television news in particular, which is what they do, which I think is extremely important. Most of what you see on television news is absolutely appalling and unwatchable. And the reason it's appalling and unwatchable is not the people who make it are terrible. I mean, they're very nice people and they work very hard at what they do. The reason it's appalling and unwatchable is more to do with the gear that they use than anything else. If you're dragging around giant cameras, or even cameras like this now, and tripods and lights, and in particular if you have a cameraman and a reporter, not even many people do that anymore, it's going to have an impact on how the work looks. And so as we move to eras of iPhones and smartphones, not only are they fantastic tools because you have them with you, you have them with you all the time. Not only are they incredibly powerful because they edit and they share and they put in graphics and everything else, but I think there's an opportunity here to reinvent, or invent for the first time, kind of what video-driven journalism should look like. If all you do is take an iPhone or smartphone and use it the way you'd use a big camera, except now it's a small camera, then to me you're wasting your time. And the last session we did with BFBS, which was particularly interesting, increasingly we're trying to drive this notion of visual images, but more significantly, it's a whole new thing with us. We're trying to drive a notion of what I would call cinematography. That is, to make a little movie instead of just doing, the typical news thing of the stretched yellow tape and the talking head, and it's a boring. And people spend their lives watching movies, and they know movies, and even if you're watching on HBO or Cinemax or something like that, and Breaking Bad or something like that, these things are shot as Hollywood films, and there's no reason that journalism can't have the same sort of arc of story and the same kind of interest that things shot in that way. One of the critical aspects to making that work is not only the manner in which you shoot it, but the way in which you tell the story. And so we have an enormous emphasis now and in the future on motion. The more people move, the more they're going somewhere, the more you see them going somewhere, the more interesting the story becomes. And so that's kind of what we're driving to. And the last training session that we did, and I'm going to post some of these pieces from the training session on VJ World, and I urge you to take a look at them. We drove in the session this notion of shooting people just going somewhere. If you're assigned to do a story as a journalist, and you have to do a profile of, some business guy, for example, which will happen sometimes, and you simply sit the guy at the desk and you do an interview with him, and it's just a talking head, it is boring. It is boring to watch visually. If you take the same exact person, you say to him, well, we have a half hour, where are you going now? And maybe he says, well, I'm going to look at a factory, I'm going to a meeting, I'm going to something like that. You say, can I go with you? And you do the same exact questions. It'll be vastly more interesting because you convey to the viewer this notion that we are going somewhere. This sense of going somewhere is really important in terms of trying to give the viewer a sense that something is going to happen. It also builds in a natural arc of story. If you start in one place and then you say, I'm cutting a piece now that we're going to air as part of a lesson. And John Schwally, who used to work for us as a video journalist at one of the Verizon stations that we work with, I told him to go and shoot a story two separate ways. He does a profile of a woman playing guitar in a club. And you can imagine, you go to the club, you see her play, you ask some questions, and you're done. You've seen pieces like this a million times. Then I told him, I want you to go home with her and start at home before she gets there and shoot her getting ready to go, leaving and going in the car and driving the car and going to the club and then playing. And then I've cut the piece exactly the same script, but with two separate ways. One is you start at the beginning with her going to the performance, and the other is you start at the performance. As it turns out, when you see the piece where she's going to the performance, you've built into the story a natural arc of story because people are anticipating that something is going to happen at the end. In other words, she's going to go to the performance. So if you get her, if you establish this as kind of a thing you're waiting for, when she gets to the performance, that's inherently a payoff. In other words, you know something's going to happen just by virtue of the fact that you're going on a physical trip with her, and when you get there, you've completed the trip. The trick here is to hold people's attention. We have very, very short attention spans. Somebody said we have the same attention span as a goldfish now, which is probably true. About 5 seconds and we're bored and we go on to something else. So if you hold people's attention, the best way to hold people's attention is create these arcs of stories. And the best way to create an arc of story is to have somebody actually go somewhere. I'm going to post on VJ World tomorrow a piece that was done by one of the BFBS trainees in which he takes basically a non-story but follows a technician getting in the truck and driving somewhere. And you'll see that it runs about 2 minutes. I'm not going to show it to you now because that would take too long. But it runs about 2 minutes. Take a look at it on VJ World, on vj.com, thevj.com, which I urge you to look at every day and certainly to sign up for. But if you look at this piece, you'll see that it runs for 2 minutes. You can't turn away from it because it's action to action to action to action to action. The action is just, he leaves frame, he goes someplace else, he's going into the car, he drives to something else, but you can't stop watching it, and the 2 minutes seems to go by like that. If you watch somebody talking for 2 minutes, like I'm doing, it can be incredibly boring, which is why I'm going to stop now, and we'll pick it up tomorrow when we're at BFBS in London, and hopefully by then we'll have one of these pieces posted, and we can talk more about it. But I think this is really important. If you go to all the effort of finding a story and shooting a story and scripting a story and putting the story online and hoping people, if no one wants to look at it, no matter how good the information is, you've wasted your time. So the most important thing here is to create something, structure something that holds someone's attention. And that's what I'm going to try and show you how to do. So tomorrow from Cliveden House, where the famous Profumo affair took place, and they got a really nice restaurant. I will talk to you later.